In this video we're going to talk about contact, and we're going to talk about 3 different clubs and 3 different types of shots. We're going to talk about your wedges, we're going to talk about your mid-irons, and then we're going to talk about driver. This is a really important routine that I would genuinely like you to join in on to improve the quality of the contact on all of those 3 different clubs. So as you can see here, I've placed an alignment stick down on the ground, okay, and that is obviously going to demonstrate where we want the ball position to be, or more in particular, it's where I want your low point to occur. So what's going to happen is that in this practice session, you're going to focus very much on contact, and therefore we need to make sure that we are controlling where the club hits the ground. So you would, during this practice session, like I say to most of my online session students, if you're going to hit 100 balls, I want you to, in this session, kind of break it up into thirds if you can. So the first proportion of the session is going to be very much on wedges. Less emphasis on the distance that you choose to practice, more emphasis on the contact. Now, what we need to do is to be able to control this and to be able to control this with not only our wedges but our mid-iron and our driver, we have to understand a couple of things. The big thing that we have to understand is your sternum location, or if you like, the sort of front portion of your spine. So as I get set up into my wedges, I need to make sure that my sternum is at least 1 inch to 2 inches ahead of that ball. Okay, so if I'm going to do some very short shots, then that basically means that if I'm only going to be doing a short action shot, say 30, 40 yards, I'm not going to be kind of moving very much in my swing. It's just going to be very much hands and arms. So therefore I need to make sure, because I'm not going to be moving much, I'm not going to be moving much towards my lead side, I have to make sure that I get this sternum ahead of the ball to start off with. So you can see as I get set up here, I'm using that relative to my ball position, but can you see the way now that I've got this, my setup position 2 to 3 inches ahead of the ball. And this also is a really good opportunity to talk about the sort of tilt. So because I'm trying to hit very much down on this type of club, you can see the way that my spine is very vertically placed and my shoulders are pretty horizontally placed. And like I say, this gives me the ability to produce a very downward action. Okay, so a lot of the contact is not necessarily going to be so influenced by what your hands and arms are doing in this practice session. It's going to be more about the awareness of that sternum location. And like I say, as long as you spend the first sort of 30 odd golf balls, I know you can't divide 100 necessarily perfectly into 3, but that's my point. I still go for a pretty wide stance. As you can see, I favour that left side. Feel like I'm just lifting my arms, chopping down on the ball, or sort of hitting down on the ball and producing some different distances, and that's fine. Now quickly we're going to go into a sort of mid-iron here. So this is just a little 8 iron, and again I'm going to go for a nice wide stance. As you can see, ball position just left of center, and again all I'm going to do here is this time make sure that in my setup position my sternum is over the ball, okay, but I still need to hit 2 to 3 inches to the left of it. But that's going to happen because as I start the downswing, so that my upper body is going to move ahead of that alignment stick, okay? And what that's going to do is that's going to produce a really crisp contact on the back of the golf ball, okay? Now, you guys, you're looking for feedback on obviously the sound of where it's occurring, and obviously if you're hitting some shots and the club sounds like it's coming behind the alignment stick, then that's just a real good idea to just produce more of that sort of feeling of trying to get that upper body more over the lead leg. And that's why, like I suggest, you start with your wedges doing that move. So if I just hit one more, set a position, lift my arms up, turn, and then move my sternum through. 3 shots there, good contact. And like I say, you guys would have practiced a little bit longer with that. Now, driver. Okay, the driver is really important for you guys to spend some of your time practicing, but your driver is also really important that when you're introducing it, you're not disassociating it. It's the same sort of motion that we're always looking for with driver. The difference with driver, however, is obviously I'm going to try and want to hit this golf ball on the up. Okay, so I don't necessarily want to position the ball similar to what I did with my mid-iron, because that means I'm going to hit the tee rather than obviously hitting the ball itself. So what we do therefore is we move the ball further forward, and by moving the ball further forward, what that naturally does is it means my sternum is now 3 to 4 inches behind the ball. So theoretically from here I can now produce a very similar swing, but obviously I don't need to move as consciously towards the lead hand side in the downswing position, okay? But equally, even if I did, and let's say like we tend to see with the pros, they still shift a lot of weight because they still want to generate a lot of force, that's fine, but then what you do is just move the ball even further forward. So if I personally position the ball quite far on the instep of my lead ankle, and the reason for that is now my sternum is a good sort of 7-8 inches behind the ball, but that means I can sort of turn back and I can still move into that lead side and still hit up on the ball. And that's why this is a really important session. Anyway, you practice that, you practice the idea of it. And the important thing in this practice session is obviously very much the location of the sternum and the influence that has on your low point. So practice it. I'll see you soon.